I am Melinda Crane, and I have the honor to moderate New Domains 2013, our two-day conference on the new GTLDs. And I'd like to extend a particularly warm welcome on behalf of our hosts, United Domains.
United Domains, the world of domains.
Guten Tag. It's good to be here. This is one of the few places where I don't have to rattle the names of 16 ministers and say things like Your Excellencies. Although you're all excellent, ladies and gentlemen. So good morning to you, Guten Tag. It's good to be here. Lots going on in the world. So I'm going to focus my notes. I kept them on a small card. When I was in Bali last week, I sat in the front with, 12 people who were speaking, and every one of them had a 7-8 page speech printed, written, and my speech was also on a small card, and I like to keep them this way. So what I'm going to do is just share with you some thoughts for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Then I'd like to frankly open it for a time for us to chat, talk. I'll ask Akram to join me in case you ask me some tough questions he can help me with. But I'd like this to be more of a dialogue if I could. But maybe just some updates first. First of all, I want to thank the organizers. I mean, Philip and Marcus, you did a superb job. I see it already, and I know people will be very, really fulfilled by the agenda that I saw. It's the right time for this. But thank you for your graciousness, for the professionalism with which you do things always. And you couldn't have picked a better time. The program of 8 years of work is born. It's huge. Frankly, there were many days, even recently, where we didn't know that this birth will happen. Many of you know how hard everyone worked to make this happen. But it's here. It's happening. And it's not going to be just a trickle. There will be many more. Next week there will be more. And the week after there will be more. So we're on a roll, and we're committed to make sure that we give you what you need so you can build the value that I know you will build. I'm very comfortable in this room. I've said this before in Amsterdam, and I say it again. I've spent 30 years amongst you. This is new for me, this business of ICANN and global geopolitics. This is not my background. My background, like you, is to build value, to build businesses, and I'm learning as I go. But my heart is with building value. And your community is what does that here. And I want to be clear, when I go to places like UN groups, even OECD, all kinds of international organizations, they have many parts that ICANN has, but what they don't have is this. They don't have an industry that is building value. They don't. We at ICANN are very lucky to have the business acumen, the business focus that many of you have. And frankly, I look forward to just make this, make us almost disappear in the background, make all the work ICANN does become very transparent so that you can focus on building value. I built businesses and I sold businesses, and I know that for you to function and to succeed, you need less risk and more stability from the ICANN side. You have suffered for a long time with a lot of instability, with a lot of unknowns. I don't know how you guys dealt with all your investors. I've been there. I've raised over $100 million of VC money in my career, and I know how hard it is to keep investors focused when the unknowns are very large and very complicated, and sometimes out of your hands. 129 governments kind of deciding certain things, and you have to live with that. These are difficult things. But I thank you, and the community thanks you for your patience. Why? Because your patience and your hard work and your tenacity is going to pay off for the consumer that we are all trying to serve at the end of the day. So thank you for that. Now, looking forward, I need to ensure with my team that we reduce the amount of uncertainty, that we manage things tightly, that we increase our operational efficiencies and our service to you across the board. Even the compliance team, which you know now reports to me, we need them to just focus, as they have been, not to be the policeman of the industry, but rather to be the customer service for the registrants, to just change the attitude and make sure we're all working hard, but not to simply make life more difficult for you, but rather to serve the end user better together as partners. And I've learned over the year that our partnership with you has a common ground, which is to serve the end user, to serve those who are looking to build communities, cities, dreams, companies, to serve them well and to give them the capabilities to do that. We have a few things to deal with, not the least the GAC, the objections, the auctions. We are going to deal with them. And there are ways for us to do a better job on them, but I must tell you, the focus has been very, very much to get the few first TLDs in the route. And look at the speed with which this happened and the tenacity of Akram's team since we built this new division. Now, some of you may not know that, but we now have a new division focused on the domain names. And Akram is the new president of that division. He's here, and he's really here to listen to you and to make sure that that division serves you very well. I think the focus on this work is important. You know, Akram had a very broad portfolio, and his background as a business person who's run billion-plus businesses and divisions was necessary to be focused here. So we brought a new administrative chief operating officer who's taken off of Akram's back HR and finance and procurement and risk management and all these things, so that his focus is entirely on making sure your industry is served so that we can together serve the end user. So these are just some of the things we've done to show all of you that this is a focus area, that serving you well is important. Building these hubs around the world is not just to tell the world we're international. It's to also make sure registrars around the planet can call our offices 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, and get help and get someone to answer their questions. Is to ensure we now start having lawyers, start having compliance people around the globe, so we don't have just a US-centric view on all of this. And nothing against US lawyers, I love them, I know many of them are in this room, but it's just having the perspective. So when a French registrar says, I can't sign this is an issue for me, it doesn't fit in my framework, we actually have ICANN lawyers, ICANN compliance officers, ICANN staff who is not based in the US and who is steeped into the frameworks of the rest of the world. And we're serious, by the way. I mean, in Asia, when I arrived, we had Zhedong Li, who was largely in China. We now will have 12 people in 6 months across Asia, compliance, IT, engagement. We're building the staff there. Similarly, in Africa, we had pretty much no one. We're building now a team in Africa. So ICANN is really reaching out, not just to build an empire, but to actually serve our community, to be available and to be responsive and to be sensitive to all the needs of our community. Now, this is the part we're doing. Let me tell you what I'm nervous about. I'm nervous about the part you're doing. Because I've built businesses, I know that this is not a given. Business plans and success rates in what you're doing is extremely important to the consumer we're all trying to serve. So I'm nervous not because I have doubts. I'm nervous because, of course, to a large degree, now that ICANN is starting to finally deliver to you what you need to perform your work, we're going to be watching you, I mean by that, watching you and cheering for you, supporting you, because your success is going to be superbly important. If the rate of failure of the new GTLDs is high, I think we will have a major problem. Because the users at the end of the day will not be served. If we're doing all of this to increase consumer choice and competitiveness, then your success is the success of the user and of ICANN's mission. So you need to know that myself and my team are here now very focused on your success. Anything we can do to improve that, you let us know. We're building the focus under Akram, we're building the tools, we're deploying finally CRM systems across the world, we're doing all the things a normal operation needs to have to service you. That's all in motion right now. I think that as the immense focus on the applications kind of takes its sunset, a lot of that focus and these energies will move to service you well, to support you, to ensure that things are not delayed. You have my commitment on that, and certainly Akram's. I'm going to switch subjects. I think many of you have been hearing and seeing what's happening in the world of internet governance. I have been quite involved in some initiatives. Let me start with giving you some background. ICANN will face huge pressures in the next 12 to 24 months leading to the WSIS if ICANN does not, as a responsible member of the internet ecosystem, bring together other organizations and other interested parties to actually stand up for the creation of a multi-stakeholder institutional framework for overall internet governance. I think the Snowden affair and the subsequent speech by President Rousseff at the UN has raised the issue of internet governance to the top of the agenda of many heads of state. It did it. And in case it's not clear, just open any paper here in Germany for the last couple of days. But it's all over the world. Heads of state came back from New York after the UN meeting and asked their teams, who's running the internet here? Just in the last week, I met with, close to 30 delegations from countries. I'll mention a couple, Mexico and Argentina. The delegation said, our president came back from New York and said, who runs the internet in Mexico? And he got stares. Argentina, same thing. She got, it's all over the place. What this means is the attention is now being put from the top down, from a governmental model. And if we tell them that the model of ICANN managing names and numbers and the IETF managing their bit, etc., and the W3C managing their bit is the model, they will say, fine, where do we go solve all these other issues? And at the Wicket, when they asked the question, what did we say? What did our community answer at the Wicket? Not here. Okay, where do we go then? If you don't want us to solve the issue in an intergovernmental model, where do we solve it? And our answer again was, not here. This answer is no longer sustainable. We cannot keep going to country after country, especially with the heightened interest now, and say, yes, it must be multi-stakeholder, okay? Where do we go do that? We have issues with cyberbullying, with spam, with all the usage issues. The GTLDs, like the CCTLDs now, are going to feel the pressure too. The Canadian CCTLD CEO, Byron, was telling me 2 days ago in Bali, he said, we're getting enormous pressure to do something. We keep telling them, all we do is names. We're down here. And they say, well, do something. We have issues with these matters. So what we've been trying to do is to create what I would call to coalesce focus on the issue that we need to address these things in a non-intergovernmental setting, because that would be an issue. An intergovernmental setting, which is what Rousseff called for at the UN speech. He said, we need to go to the UN to solve all these issues. The gentleman in the Korean government who will head the Plenipot next year, Vice Minister Yoon, announced recently in front of me in Korea that we should send all matters of cybersecurity and so on to the UN, to the ITU specifically. All these things will affect us. And when you have middle governments, this is South Korea, not North Korea. South Korea, you have Brazil, India, all these middle governments saying the solution is multilateral, which means intergovernmental, I think we will have an issue. So about 10 weeks ago, we started to bring together a coalition. We first started with the I-STAR group, which is essentially the CEOs of all the internet organizations. We met them in Montevideo, and many of you have seen the statement they made. This was the result of 2 days of very intense discussions to get them to say together that we need to solve this issue. We then went to the governments of Brazil. I went to Brasilia to meet with President Rousseff, and I must tell you this was a seminal moment for us, because if she had not changed her mind, we would have had a very major issue in getting a large number of governments to reassess the intergovernmental model. But she did. It was an intense meeting, and at the end of that meeting, she accepted our invitation to switch from a multilateral to a multi-stakeholder approach, and she asked her team to immediately call for the first global multi-stakeholder conference to discuss new institutional frameworks for internet governance, which will be held next year in May in Brazil. This was a huge accomplishment for us, and she immediately started tweeting multi-stakeholder immediately after I left her office, and during the IGF, she retweeted multi-stakeholders the way. Of course, I left her and I went to India and I met with Indian officials there, and we also got Minister Sibal to publicly announce in India that the multilateral model will not be effective for internet governance, that the multi-stakeholder model is the right model. So this, you have two major bricks agreeing to shift back to a multi-stakeholder model, and now, frankly, all of us need to support that shift and make sure that we don't enter into the WSIS review process with all these middle governments going towards a multilateral pure solution. Because we all know this will not be effective. The way we convinced Dilma is not to tell her, business needs to be involved. No, it was to explain that if we're all involved, we'll make better solutions. And once they all captured that feeling, India and Brazil, I also went to South Korea, and I'm happy to report that also the South Korean government is now considering joining this effort, along with businesses. Microsoft, Cisco, Disney, company after company last week all agreed to join us in this effort as well. So we're broadening the coalition with business, we're broadening the coalition with civil society. 5 civil society leaders have agreed to represent civil society into this. So we're making sure that we together can go to the world with an internet governance solution that is more about cooperation, not governance, that is more about building distributed solutions, not a massive new internet governance body, that is about allowing organizations like ICANN not to expand its remit, because we don't want to expand our remit. We need, now that the GTLD program is born, to focus our efforts on our work of names and numbers, not to expand what we do. So we want ICANN to remain in its box, doing what it does, and the IETF, and the W3C, and every institution in that space. So this is not about expanding ICANN, quite the opposite. This will actually allow us to stick to our knitting, and that's what we need to do. So this is just my update, high level, on both the GTLD program and internet governance. Frankly, I feel very good about the phase we're in. We actually are entering a tough period, but I feel that we have, as a community, we have done the right things. We're not perfect, and we get hit, as someone told me last night. We don't know how you take all these hits from so many places. Everybody has an opinion, and everybody has a different view, and we need to align a lot of people to move in one direction. But what happened in the Dilma meeting was that there was a clarity on where the solution is and where the truth is. And so long as we keep focused on where the solution is and do it truthfully without any special interests, you will find that the world will stand with us. And that's what we're committed to do. Now I'm going to invite Akram Attallah to join me, and we can maybe just open it for some Q&A. Thank you.